When Elena first stepped through the high iron gates of the vast mansion, she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. The cold air of early morning wrapped around her thin, worn-out clothes as she clutched the small bag that contained everything she owned. Her eyes moved across the courtyard, taking in the elegant fountain, the trimmed hedges, the polished stone steps that led up to a pair of enormous oak doors. This was a place she had never imagined entering in her entire life. Houses like this were meant for people with lives untouched by misfortune, untouched by the iron bars and suffocating walls of prison cells. But fate had brought her here, not by choice, but by desperation and a rare opportunity. She adjusted her headscarf, hiding the uneven ends of her hair, then took a deep breath. The agency had told her very little, only that a wealthy widower was searching for a caretaker for his paralyzed son. The pay was good, too good. She knew why. Her past. No one wanted to hire a former inmate, except someone who needed cheap labor, someone who thought her background made her easier to control. She expected cold eyes, judgment, suspicion. She expected to be treated as less than human. But she needed this job. She needed a chance. She needed to survive. The door opened with a soft creak, and she found herself face to face with Mr. Viktor Sokolov, a man whose name carried influence, power, and tragedy. His wife had died 3 years ago. His only son, 19-year-old Demyan, had been paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident. The newspapers said Sokolov lost half his soul that day, and the other half the day his wife left this world. Elena had read those articles in the prison library, never imagining that one day her future would be tied to this man's household. But as he stood in the doorway, tall, sharp-featured, impeccably dressed, she realized something. He didn't look like a man crushed by grief anymore. He looked like someone who had learned to hide all his emotions behind a mask carved out of steel. His voice was calm, controlled, like someone accustomed to command. "You're the new caretaker," he said, not a question, just a statement. "Yes," Elena whispered, "if you'll have me." His eyes flicked over her, the plain clothes, the scarf, the tired but steady gaze. She braced herself, but instead of rejection, he simply stepped aside. "Follow me." The mansion smelled of polished wood, expensive perfume, and quiet loneliness. Elena followed Sokolov through long corridors, past tall windows that opened onto a garden where she could hear water trickling in a distant fountain. She felt like she had entered a world too delicate to touch, afraid she might stain it simply by breathing. Demyan's room was spacious but dim, curtains drawn shut. He sat in his wheelchair, his eyes fixed on the floor, dark hair falling over his forehead. When Sokolov spoke, the boy didn't respond. He barely lifted his head. Elena saw the exhaustion in his young face, the bitterness carved into the lines of his jaw. Life had stolen everything from him, movement, freedom, perhaps even hope. "This is Elena," Sokolov said. "She will be assisting you from today." Demyan didn't look at her. He only muttered, "Whatever." Sokolov's jaw tightened. "Show some respect." Elena stepped forward gently. "It's all right, I understand." Demyan's eyes flickered up, surprised by her soft tone, but quickly looked away again. Sokolov seemed to study her reaction. Something unspoken passed through his expression, approval, perhaps, or calculation, she couldn't tell. He turned to leave. "I have a business trip in 2 days. You'll manage everything while I'm away." "Yes, sir." What she didn't know, what he didn't tell her, was that the moment he would leave for the airport, he planned to activate a hidden camera he had installed in Demyan's room weeks ago. He wanted to see how she behaved when no one was watching. He wanted to know whether this quiet woman with the sad eyes and the prison scars was trustworthy. He wanted to know if hiring her had been a mistake. Elena didn't know she was being watched. All she knew was that she had to do this right. The first evening was silent, almost painfully so. Demyan refused food, refused help, refused conversation. Elena prepared a tray anyway and left it near him. Later she found the soup half-eaten. She didn't comment. The next morning she opened the curtains, and Demyan shouted at her. She didn't flinch. She simply said, "You need sunlight, even if you think you don't," and continued cleaning. Bit by bit, the silence began to crack. 3 days in, she caught him watching her while she organized his bookshelf. His eyes weren't hostile anymore, only curious. She smiled softly, and he quickly looked away, embarrassed. The camera caught that moment, the first flicker of change in the boy's expression that Sokolov had seen in months. But the real turning point came at night. Demyan woke from a nightmare, breathing heavily, trembling. Elena rushed in, unsure whether he would push her away, but he didn't. He looked lost, terrified, like a child drowning in memories of the crash. She placed a hand on his shaking shoulder, whispering gently, "You're safe. I'm here," and for the first time, he let someone near his pain. He let her calm him down. The camera saw everything, the way she spoke to him, the patience in her voice, the kindness that radiated from her even when she thought no one could see her. Sokolov watched from a hotel room hundreds of miles away, and something inside him clenched painfully. He hadn't seen his son look at anyone with trust in years. And the woman who brought that change was someone society had thrown away. But then, the night that changed everything came. Sokolov had half forgotten the camera. He turned it on absent-mindedly, expecting more quiet routines, more harmless scenes. But what he saw froze him to his bones. It was past midnight. Demyan was asleep, breathing softly. The room was dark except for the dim yellow lamp beside the bed. Elena sat near the window, reading an old book, her scarf slightly loosened, her face softened by exhaustion. But then she heard something, a sound, faint but sharp, scraping against the back door of the mansion. She rose quickly, tense. The camera captured her moving through the hallway silently, barefoot, listening carefully. Something, or someone, was outside. And then Sokolov saw what he had not expected at all. Elena stepped into the kitchen, grabbed a heavy marble rolling pin, and positioned herself near the back entrance as the lock rattled. Someone was trying to break in. A thief, maybe more. When the door finally opened, Elena sprang forward with a force that didn't match her slender frame. The intruder staggered back as she struck his hand, sending his tool flying. He lunged. She dodged, hit his ribs, then his shoulder. She moved like someone who had learned to defend herself the hard way. She held him off alone, protecting the house, protecting the boy asleep upstairs. By the time the alarm system activated and guards arrived, the intruder fled. Elena stood shaking, breathless, clutching the rolling pin like a lifeline. Sokolov stared at the screen long after it went black. This woman, the ex-convict he had judged, the caretaker he didn't trust, had risked her life to protect his son. She had done what trained guards had failed to do. She had done it without hesitation. When he returned the next morning, Elena was already preparing Demyan's breakfast, as if the night had been nothing but a passing storm. But when she saw him, her expression changed. She expected the worst. She expected accusations, suspicion, blame. Instead, for the first time, Viktor Sokolov looked at her not with caution, but with gratitude. Deep, quiet gratitude. "You saved my son," he said simply. Elena looked down. "I just did what anyone would." "No," he replied softly. "Not anyone." Demyan wheeled forward, his eyes clearer than before. "She's the first person who treats me like I still matter." Elena's throat tightened, and in that moment, Sokolov understood something he never expected, that sometimes the most broken people were the ones who held others together. That sometimes strength came wrapped in silence, and courage came from those whom society had already condemned. He looked at Elena, truly looked, and something inside him shifted. "You're not going anywhere," he said firmly. "Not unless you want to." For the first time in years, Elena felt the warmth of belonging, of being seen not for her past, but for her heart. And deep inside the mansion where loss had lived for too long, something new began to grow. Trust, hope, a future.